Hello everyone, this is Karl Demian from the ambulance staff charity TASC, and I'm very pleased to be recording this conversation today with the Chief Executive from Mind Over Mountains, Ian Sansbury. And we're taking as our theme for this conversation the theme of Mental Health Week, which is about using movement and exercise to improve your mental well-being. Which we all think is really important. And the report from the Mental Health Foundation, which was published today to coincide with the start of Mental Health Awareness Week, has actually produced a statistic that 82% of us do actually recognise how important physical exercise is in maintaining our well-being. So that's the theme of our conversation. I'm going to ask Ian to talk a little bit about himself and Mind Over Mountains before we get a bit more chatty about the whole subject. So, Ian, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Karl, and yeah, really good to be here with you today, and it feels so meaningful and kind of prescient that we're here on the first day of Mental Health Awareness Week, talking about this very important topic. And as you said, I have the great privilege of leading a charity called Mind Over Mountains. We are a small but very ambitious and rapidly growing mental health charity, and we support people through wellbeing walks and residential retreats, and those walks and retreats bring together walking and talking in nature and mindfulness and the support of our outstanding team of coaches and counsellors and mountain leaders. So very typically on an event we'd take 15 or 16 people supported by a coach and a counsellor and by two walk leaders, so qualified mountain leaders whose job it is to make sure that everyone comes back safe. And as it says on the tin, what we're really looking to do is get people out into some of those amazing landscapes that we have in this country, very typically within our national parks.
Great. And just one question immediately occurs to me. 82% of us know that this helps us. So what do you think from a Mind Over Mountains perspective about what you do actually helps people, and how do you help them to improve their mental health? So, yeah.
I think it's first thing to say is I'm really struck and encouraged by that figure of 82%. That is a really good stat, and I'm sure we'll talk later on about why it is that 82% don't spend their time kind of in nature or being physically active as much as they would like to be. But the research is very clear about why what we do is impactful. I mean, at the end of the day, we've known for a long time that physical activity can kind of reduce stress, reduce anxiety, reduce depression, create more energy. The same is true for being in nature. And there was I don't know if you saw, there was a report published by the University of Exeter a couple of weeks ago that made very clear that physical activity is one thing. And if you are physically active in your local gym, or you've got an exercise bike at home or whatever, that's great. If you do physical activity in nature, the outcomes are that much greater. And then, of course, you sort of build in an activity like walking, where you can connect with other people and you can spend time, talking and being part of a group, even if it's, you're kind of walking with a friend or a family member. Again, that's very, very powerful. So you bring all of those things together. That's a really good start. And then with our retreats and our walks, we build in a lot of mindfulness. So we're taking that time to be present and to be able to connect with the landscape that we're in. That's very important. And then the involvement of our coaches and counsellors who are there. I think they would say, and I'm not a coach or a counsellor, but I think they would say their job is to create that safe psychological space for people both to engage with some stuff that is hard for them to engage with, but also to discuss it with those around them. Because the most profound conversations that we experience and that I've seen, particularly on our retreats, but on our walks as well, happen between participants. Our coaches and counselors are important, and yes, those sort of participant to well-being team conversations can be really important in somebody's process, but actually it's people supporting each other, participants supporting each other, listening generously, and then just being there to just help support and guide somebody through what they're trying to work through. So those are the ingredients, if you like, to what we do. Some of the magic of what happens on a Mind Over Mountains retreat or a walk.
That's really, really interesting, and particularly what you say about the walking and talking, because my wife and I do quite a lot of walking in the countryside. I get huge amount of pleasure, firstly, from being out in the middle of nowhere and particularly being surrounded by trees. I love walking through woods and forests, and particularly what you say about the mindfulness, because there's something about that rhythm I find of walking at a particular place that slows my mind down, forces me to look where I'm putting my feet, which is an unusual thing we don't really think about. But then all of a sudden you notice the life, the activity around you, beneath your feet. You notice the different colors, the way that the light plays. And that has, certainly for me, a very calming and soothing effect. And when we do group walking, because we often go off on group walks, there's something about, as you said, that generosity that people have when you're out sharing a physical activity that isn't about competition. That then enables you sometimes to say to things to people you don't really know or have just met that you perhaps wouldn't say to anyone else, because there's a moment that comes together of sharing in that particular space, which is, I think, really powerful. And I love what you said about the following on from that, about the way that it's not just the counsellors and the leaders that are involved in the help, but so much of the help comes from talking to the people on the walk. And there is a lot of evidence about that peer-to-peer support being really important. Do you help people to stay in contact afterwards, or do you encourage that as part of your program?
We very much encourage it. I would love for us to be more intentional about setting up those kind of follow-on groups. They tend to happen. I mean, we know that we create lifelong friendships, through participants on our walks, and invariably at the end of an event, whether it's a retreat or a walk, people are exchanging contact details with each other, and we know we have a walk and talk group on our on our Facebook group that we can see a lot of that in action, and it's very organic. As I say, I'd love that to be a bit more intentional. We're part of our strategy that we launched a couple of months ago talks a lot about moving away from events into programs and working out how we can best sustain the outcomes that we achieve on a retreat or a walk. Now, there are no kind of huge issues there. Our end of year survey is a great place for us to gauge the long-term impacts that we're having on people. And last year's survey, 91% of our participants said that they'd had a lasting mental health benefit from coming on our events, which is fantastic. And we work really hard on those events to make sure that people come away with some tools and some strategies and some ways to sustain what they've learned. So whether that's really focusing on, okay, how and when am I going to get out in nature? How and when am I going to be physically active? How am I going to connect to more people? Because I've learned that that's going to be something that's going to support me. When am I going to do some mindfulness in my day so that, I've got that to fall back on. So all that's good and it's important. But there are a few things that we're doing at the moment, we've created some resources that will send to participants, on a sort of periodic basis after an event. So just that little reminder, about don't forget mindfulness. Here are some tips and tricks. Here are some ways to feel comfortable getting out in nature. We'll add to that over time, how to feel comfortable with map reading, right? We've got to remember that, for some people, there's a huge amount of anxiety about getting out in nature and being able to find your way. So it's just those ways of kind of practically supporting people in that journey. But to your point as well, just making sure that we're connecting people into into groups that they can use to sustain, that walking and talking in nature, whether that's a Mind Over Mountains kind of originated group, or it's another group that's in their community that's meeting already. I mean, we're certainly not precious about it having to be a Mind Over Mountains activity.
Yeah, I think again some really interesting stuff in that how we can continue to build on it and keep the impact of what you do on a walk there for as long as possible. And I think what I quite like about it, of course, is it's the one thing we haven't really talked about here is that although we talk about exercise, we're really talking about movement and conversation. And when people think of exercise, they often think of gyms and running and all these events that I personally enjoy. Not running, I can't run I like cycling and walking. Cycling because it's sitting down, and walking because I can do the pace. But it's good that we're just talking about just getting moving, just being out and about and maintaining contact. And I know you've done quite a lot of work with ambulance and I think many of the other emergency services, which brings me to another statistic or another couple of statistics in the Mental Health Foundation report we talked about earlier. The first one is that what we do know about working in the emergency responders, whether that's voluntary or whether it's paid as it is for a lot of people, they're subject to a lot of stress and anxiety. And according to the Mental Health Foundation, 28% of people just feel I can't cope with thinking about moving and going out on things. Do you have any suggestions how people can sort of overcome that, get over that stress and anxiety, that feeling that you're stuck? And it's quite an interesting thing. And do you find that with any of your participants, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is so common, and I think, if we look at the society we're in at the moment, and clearly your listeners are at the sharp end of stress and anxiety, but we have an epidemic of stress and anxiety. There's no doubt about that. You and I, as charity chief execs, can probably subscribe to that as well to a certain extent. And I think
Definitely.
the answers are not simple, but are quite clear, which is, it comes down to routine, and it comes down to habit, and it comes down for me to planning those things around, movement, around potentially, kind of mindfulness, around connection, into your life before anything else. And possibly literally anything else. And when we talk, when we get on an aeroplane, we hear the steward or stewardess talk about, if that oxygen mask comes down, put yours on before you help somebody else. And all of these are aspects of self-care that we need to work on, literally before anything else, before family, before work, before anything else that we're doing in our lives, because they are so fundamental. So I think having that sense of priority, and then having that sense of routine, which I know for some of your listeners will be hard, right? Because a lot of people will be working shift patterns that
Yeah.
change. But just working out that, if I'm working this particular shift, then this is the time that I'm going to do that activity. I'm going to get out on the bike. I'm going to go out for a walk in the local park. Whatever it is that supports you. And back to that 82%, people know that it's the right thing to do, and it helps to sustain them. If you can plan that in and have that regular routine, and just that sense of I'm going to go and do it however I feel, we all know that we come back from that feeling better than we went out. Some of the times I walk and run, and the times when I least feel like running are the times when I know I benefit most from it, and I get back after half an hour of plodding. I'm not a particularly good runner, but I'll plod round the particular circuit that we tend to use, or up the local canal towpath, and I know I'll come back and I'll be in a better place. And that will be from a stress and anxiety perspective, but also from a cognitive place. If I'm struggling with my work, the best thing to do for me is to just put on a pair of trainers and as I say, run up the canal and back, and all of a sudden the things I was really finding hard all of a sudden seem a lot more straightforward.
I think that's really interesting, because it does feed quite nicely into the other statistic, which from the report, which is that 30%, 37%, well over a third of people can't find the time. And fully understand that. When most people don't work shifts anymore, it's the sort of thing that doesn't really happen. My father was a shift worker for 30 years of his life as a coal miner, and he would never have fitted exercise, and I think the closest he got was going to the pub, but that was pretty good. But it is this discipline, as you say. It is making time, and I think also for me, because like you, I have a very busy life and work, and sometimes I can carve out at the weekends. I can say, right, that's the 2 hours I'm going to the gym, these are the 4 hours we're going to go a walk around Warwickshire, or I think on Wednesday, which is my day off, we're going to do a circuit around the Malverns, which will be really nice. But I
Lovely.
can carve that time out. But in the week, I've got a family, I've got friends, relationships to keep going. I've got other responsibilities for work and things I do outside of work. What I've found is that yes, I can plan, but sometimes the plans can't be sustained. But what I always try and do at the end of the day, or even maybe even after this conversation, if I'm feeling stressed because I'm not happy how it's gone, I will just go and walk around the garden if I've only got 5 minutes, because the garden won't keep me, isn't that long to walk around, but just slow down and look, and that's movement and mindfulness, as you're saying. But I have a little circuit like you. It's a walk that takes, it's about a mile and 3/4, and I record mentally my best time. And although I don't always try and beat it, it gets me out. It takes me a much short period of time, and when I come back, everything feels, as you say, uh, what are you worried about? It helps to clear the mind, helps you to make you feel better. But it is a real issue, a difficulty for people working shifts, that your shift finishes in the early hours of the morning, you're tired, you're hungry, you haven't seen your partner, you haven't seen your kids, you haven't seen your friends, to actually prioritize exercise. And we're very good at telling people about maintaining relationships, but sometimes, even though people understand the importance of movement and exercise, it gets shoved down the agenda, which I think is a real problem, and something that we need to work on, maybe by reframing exercise is not something that's a torture, which is why I like what you do in Mind Over Mountains. We're sitting
Yeah,
and talking, and in the background, you've got a group of people that have clearly walked, not sure, snow. It looks like Wales, the picture at the back, I think, not sure.
yeah, it is. It's sort of in and around Cadair Idris, so it's sort of the northern part of mid Wales.
Right. And the group of people, there's about 10 of them, I think, who've clearly got to the top. They've got their arms raised, and they really do look, as though they've enjoyed it, every bit of it. And maybe that's the bit we need to talk to people is, yes, exercise can be hard, it can be stressful on the body, but actually it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think the other thing that helps to prioritize, and particularly in the context of a busy family life, which, for many of us, that's one of the things, one of the barriers that stops us from spending as much time, out there, moving as much as we should, is to make it a family thing. And there are all sorts of benefits there. I always say that if I want a sensible, kind of meaningful, deep conversation with either of my teenagers, I've got an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, then I'll do it on a walk, because they will tell me things on a walk that they would never dream of telling me face to face, sat in the kitchen. And that's not because somehow, walking is some sort of, strange truth drug, but we do feel more comfortable, I think, opening up and talking to each other on a walk. So, there's that aspect to sort of family relationship, and that's a way, again, if it's that sort of walk before dinner time in an evening, or after dinner, or first thing in the morning, whatever it is, that's the way of finding that space. If it's rather than driving to the shops, okay, well, I'm going to walk to the shops instead, and it might take me an extra half an hour out of my day, but actually that's worth it. And to your point, not only is that giving me some physical exercise, but it's giving me some downtime and some chance to process, and the chance for my overworked brain to to just sort of settle, and ponder some things. And that might be something that's work related, or it might be nothing at all. I always say to people, that I'm going to go out for a walk this afternoon. I'm planning to have this kind of deep thought about what the charity's going to do next year, or whatever, some real challenge. I tend to find that walking, I don't manage to do that, because my brain just switches off. I find myself kind of pondering nature, looking at trees and birds and the canal, and whatever it is, and really struggling to kind of process. And I think that's fine. Actually, I think that's really important for us to do, and to just have that time, when we are genuinely mindful and present. I think that's an important part of a day.
I really agree with that last bit, because it's very easy to fall into this temptation. I think I'm going to go out for a walk and I'm going to ponder the problems of my job, my life, the universe. And actually, like you, I find that the brain switches off from that. It engages with things. And I think we forget how important um, that is, actually, because we all process things unconsciously, and it just gives space and time, and it's quite refreshing. I often find that I'll be in front of a computer all day. I'm staring at a screen. My eyes feel tired. 10 minutes walking, my eyes no longer feel tired, because they're forced to focus away. They see things. And sometimes when I come back, I can then go and sit in a chair and I can ponder these difficult thoughts, because the brain's had a rest.
Mm.
It really
I,
has.
I think what we're talking about is that difference between busyness and productivity. And I think we've been taught over generations that, productivity is about doing stuff, and being busy. And as a result, our minds are busy, and our minds are not built to be busy all the time.
Yeah.
And we're not we're not a computer. We don't work like that. I guess even my computer, kind of starts to steam if it gets used a bit too much. But that's not the way the human brain is designed to work, and we need variety in our lives. We need time when we're problem solving and we're using our brains very actively, but our brains actually need time to rest and to ponder. And there's kind of different modes that we need to go through. And if we're not taking that time to be properly mindful, however you do that, and that might be sitting and doing some kind of some breath work for 20 minutes, and that can be very powerful. I kind of build some of that into my day when I can. But as we're both pretty much agreeing, walking is a fantastic way to get that downtime and that processing time, if you like.
Yeah, and as you say, the advantage of what your organization does is to get people out into places they might be afraid to go or nervous about going, because having been on a hillside in Catalonia when the fog came down, and knowing I think to the right of the Pyrenees and to the left is a drop and I can't see it anywhere, it can actually be both exhilarating in a good way, but also very difficult if you're not used to that, to put yourself into those places. But I think the other thing for me as well that I find really quite powerful is the link between movement, exercise and diet. One of the things I always found, I look at the people on the top of the hill near Ceder Idris, which are behind you, and I'm thinking to myself, one of the things they're really going to enjoy tonight is going to be their food and their evening meal, and the pleasure that they will get into that. My wife sometimes says the only reason that you exercise is so you can eat more. Now, there's not much of me, but I do enjoy my food. I enjoy the exercise, and the link between that and diet, exercise and diet and well-being is also, I think, pretty well understood, and actually helps to provide both, two aspects of the physical balance that we often need to feel well, which I think is key. So I think nutrition, and again, people are too stressed to think about what they're going to eat and to plan. I think often people don't have the time, particularly, you're finishing at 2 a.m. in the morning, you had a really difficult shift. Do you go home and do you try and cook yourself a meal? Or do you stop at the McDonald's 24-hour outlet that's on the way? Now, there's nothing wrong with McDonald's, and there are no doubt other brands available. But, if that becomes your diet and what you're eating, then also that isn't helpful. So there's quite a lot of trying to stitch all of this together, I think, for people and make the time. So we've talked quite a lot about the reason it works. So what do you think? What's next for Mind Over Mountains?
Well, I mean, it's really exciting times for us. I mean, I mentioned that we're growing quite rapidly. We've just launched our 3-year strategy,
Right.
so that will take us into 2027. We already deliver. So our retreats we're kind of we are a national charity, but we operate in different ways depending on kind of what we're delivering. So our residential retreats are national, so we operate those all across the country, and those are available to the public at large. Anyone can book onto those. Our wellbeing walks, so our day walks for the public, we're focusing on the Lake District and the Peak District at the moment, because in order to reach the people who most need our support, we need to engage with social prescribers. We need to work with local mental health charities, community organisations, local authorities, and so on. So we've sort of shrunk a little bit to grow back again. So part of the next 3 years is to make sure that those wellbeing walks are available, right across the UK to any member of the public. So that's so that growth piece is really important. And by the same token, making sure that we're working with more organisations. And you mentioned earlier on, we work with a number of emergency responder organisations, including the College of Paramedics. So if you are a member of theirs, then our retreats are available to you through the college. If you are a member of the Welsh Ambulance Service, then you can access the walks that we deliver with them. But we'd very much like our wellbeing walks and our retreats to be available to more emergency responder organisations, because we recognise that the stress, the anxiety, the depression, the response and impact of trauma are very significant in those organisations. So that's a real focus for us. And then it's about growing our reach and our access. And reach is all about reaching those communities that are most impacted by mental ill health, but who are very typically underrepresented in the outdoors. So we might think of the BAME community, LGBT plus people. We might think about younger people more generally, and young women in particular, where the mental health stats are really challenging. So reach is important, and then access. We've touched on this a little bit. What are those barriers that stop people from getting out into nature? And sometimes they can be as simple as finance, or transport, or availability of kit, or physical fitness. So all of those things we're looking to try and break down those barriers, and to just help people on that journey. They may not be ready yet for a full day walk in the Peak District or the Lake District or in South Wales, but let's make sure that we're taking people on that journey, because ultimately our vision is not necessarily to be delivering thousands of retreats and thousands of walks and kind of reaching tens or hundreds of thousands of people. Our vision is for people to be able to sustain themselves and to support themselves by doing these various things. So it's really about creating the conditions for people to understand the benefits of walking and talking and being in nature and connecting with each other, but B, it's about supporting people on that journey. So whether they come on a retreat or a walk with us, or they just get up and go outside at lunchtime or first thing in the morning to have their dose of what they need, then that's the key thing. We often talk about ourselves being the natural health service. And I think that's a really important thing. And ultimately, as we all know, there's no waiting list for the Natural Health Service. So let's all get out there and use it.
Brilliant. That sounds really exciting. And I think to wrap it up, what opportunity for you to share one top tip. I'll go first and share. It won't be, it's sort of one, but lots of things rolled into it. I think it's touched on what you said, and you reminded me of thinking of something. Access to the countryside is actually quite precious, and access to the outdoors. And most of us live in cities. And the thought of the countryside is many miles away. You've got to drive. The public transport isn't necessarily great. But I do remember when I first moved to Birmingham, and I moved down from the Staffordshire moorlands up on a hill, and I was used to wide open spaces, wind, sheep and cattle, and being on my own, moving to a city the size of Birmingham. But I actually found a place called Edgbaston Reservoir, which is right in the middle of the city. It's bounded on a number of sides, and there I used to just walk around the reservoir, and people used to say to me, well, isn't that a bit boring? But it's not. Even though it was the same walk, it changed almost daily. Different weather, different this. And I think my top tip is find something that you can do easily, that you can do without not lots of expensive kit, like going out and buying an expensive carbon frame bicycle that you go on twice, which everybody makes that mistake. Well, not everybody, but people make that mistake. Just find something you can do, something that's local, and something that reconnects you with the way the world moves. I think is really important. And that that I remember was helped me to transition from being a country boy to now I couldn't imagine living in the country,
Mm.
out in the country. And anything from you similarly along that you have perhaps learnt that you would share with people?
I think although I mean both you and I have both talked today about the benefits of walking on your own or doing physical
Hmm.
activity on your own, and the opportunity that you have to kind of decompress and de-stress and for your brain just to cope better with all the things that it's got to deal with. I think for me, using walking in particular as a means to connect. So if it's family members, that's great. If it's teenagers,
Hmm.
gosh, the challenge of persuading a teenager out of their bedroom, off their PlayStation, whatever, to get out for a walk is there. But I'd encourage that. But also, who are the people in your network? Who are the friends that sustain you, and that you're going to find whether a walk, whether it's half an hour or half a day or a full day or whatever, really a positive experience. And to build in those sorts of routines. I've got a friend that I walk with very regularly, and that's a moment to look forward to. And we don't go with an agenda, and we just walk and talk about kind of what's going on in our lives. Quite often we'll be silent, so we're getting some of that benefit of kind of companionship, as well as as well as that chance to decompress. But I think there's something deeply built into our kind of DNA, our operating system, if you like, that is about walking and talking. I think that comes from where we are as animals,
Hmm.
that we're built for movement and companionship and connection. So I think when we do those things, we're only fulfilling kind of part of the reason why we're here on the planet in the first place.
I think that's a great place to finish that concept, Ian, of we're built for movement and talk and walking and talking. I think if we could all hold on to that, find ways of putting that into our lives, I'm sure not only would we be better people, but the world would be a better place as well. Ian, it's been really great talking to you. Thank you very much. Uh, for those people that will be listening to this, thank you for listening, and hope that you've taken from Ian and a little bit from me as well, some ideas, but certainly from Ian and the work that his team do, some inspiration for you in the future. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you so much.